Abdullah Ocalan is serving a life sentence in a Turkish jail, but he continues to command the Kurdish Workers' Party. Now you're looking at live pictures of an event to celebrate the Kurdish New Year. And just a short time ago, a representative from Turkey's Peace and Democracy Party read out a statement from Ocalan, and he called for a new period in Kurdish-Turkey relations where politics, not the gun, will take the lead. There are nearly 30 million Kurds who live in this area, highlighted in red, and they're concentrated around eastern Turkey, northern Iraq, western Iran, and parts of Syria and Armenia. And the goal of the Kurdish Workers' Party, better known as the PKK, has been to establish an independent state. Its roots date back nearly 40 years. Abdullah Ocalan has led the rebels this whole time, even though he's been in prison for the past 14 years. Now, PKK fighters began their violent campaign in 1984, and since then, nearly 40,000 people have been killed in the fighting, mostly with Turkish troops. But last October, the Turkish government and the PKK, they began talks to try to end the conflict. And Ocalan's call for a truce is the latest step in that peace process. Now, let's go now to journalist Andrew Finkel, live in Istanbul. And Andrew, I mean, even before this statement came out, it was deemed historic. Is this historic? Could we be nearing the end of the 30-year-old Kurdish war?
Well, we haven't reached the end yet, but we've certainly reached a momentous step in this process. The fact that Abdullah Ocalan, a man once vilified in the Turkish press, a man called the baby killer who was sentenced to death in 1999, he, in a sense, has been rehabilitated as a person who commands the respect of the Kurdish community in Turkey. And he has called not simply for a ceasefire, but for a controlled withdrawal of arms. So this is really a momentous step in the quest for peace, but it's a little bit up in the air because we don't know yet what the Turkish authorities have promised that they'll do in return to secure the cooperation of the PKK, Christy.
Yeah, and these comments from Ocalan, they come during the Kurdish New Year. We're watching live pictures of the Kurdish New Year celebration currently underway. Could you give us some more context about what led to this announcement from Ocalan? I mean, there had been months of peace talks between the PKK and Turkey, but what did both sides, in concrete terms, actually agree on?
Well, this we don't actually know. I mean, there's various versions of what had happened. We've had a major leak to the Turkish press. Abdullah Ocalan has said that there'll be some sort of autonomy for the Kurds, some sort of devolution, major devolution of power. But I think what we know today is that there is a great desire that this conflict should end, and what we're seeing is a celebration. It's the first day of spring. It's the Kurdish New Year. In the past, this has been an occasion for rioters to throw Molotov cocktails at the police, but now we see it's an occasion for people to come out and dance and to listen to music and to listen to this very important announcement by their leader. So today, at least, is a day of optimism. Or what the future will hold, of course, we have no way of knowing for sure, of course, Christy.
Is there a day of optimism in this Kurdish New Year after this call for a ceasefire from Abdullah Ocalan? Can you tell us more about Ocalan, the PKK leader himself? I mean, how long has he been in prison, and also just how he's been able to command and lead the PKK while being in jail?
Well, it is in many ways a remarkable achievement. Abdullah Ocalan was basically a poor Kurdish villager who had some education, who basically led what was, in many minds, a sort of radical, almost Stalinist movement in the 70s in Turkey, a time when there was the far left was very active. But he made this transition from being a sort of leftist, as it were, to being a Kurdish nationalist. And in 1984, the newly formed PKK formed basically a movement which used violent and terrorist tactics in order to make their point. And there was a very heavy-handed response from the Turkish authorities, long years of conflict and civil war. In many ways, this conflict played into the hands of the PKK, into the hands of the nationalists, because if you couldn't have democratic Kurdish rights, really, the PKK was the last man standing. They were the people who were defending the true force of arms, the independence movement. So the Kurds remember him with that respect. And of course, what happened is that he took refuge in Syria in 1998. The Syrians, under Turkish pressure, got rid of Öcalan. Öcalan was sort of fleeing for his political survival. He was apprehended in Kenya, of all places, returned to Turkey, where he stood trial, a very dramatic moment in Turkish history when Öcalan went on trial in 1999, was found guilty of treason, was sentenced to death. And this was really a moment of great sort of catharsis in Turkey, that they felt that they'd solved the Kurdish problem through force of arms. But of course, it continued to drag on. Öcalan at the time, I mean, I was actually at that trial in 1999, and Öcalan, basically the message he was delivering was, well, that's fine, I did it, but let's move on. And if you need to solve this problem, you need my help. I'm the person who can basically solve this problem on your behalf. So when you're ready, come to me. And of course, all these years later, more than nearly 15 years later, he has, in a sense, been rehabilitated as a political leader, and Turkey is trying to do business with him, Christy.
Well, Andrew, thank you so much for joining us on the line and giving us so much context into Öcalan, the PKK leader, and his latest call for a ceasefire to end nearly 30 years of violence.